So big changes happening for you in life and with the business. So first
Yep.
step of going full-time to part-time, you're now officially part-time at Crystal Organic Farm. So
Yep.
now you're like a half hustle and a full hustle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's no longer just on the side in the free time. It's officially like it has dedicated days and work hours that it gets now, which means it also has dedicated finances that are required of it there.
If you go back before you did this, just to remind people, you were part-time, so you were 4 days a week full-time?
Five.
Five.
I was 5 days a week until our first farmer's market, and I went down to one. I went down to 4 days, and then so now today actually is my first week of going down to 3 days. So yeah, it's like a month of 4 days, and then now we're down to three.
And then when you were at 5 days, how many hours do you think you were putting into the farm, your farm at that time? 20-ish?
Ideally, yeah, it probably ended up somewhere around 16 to 20, just depending on the week and kind of what else was going on in life.
Okay, so step back to 4, get the market going, step back to 3. That's always when you go from secure income of having a job to the
Hmm.
unknown of doing your own thing, there's always nervousness. And this is where I don't think there's a right solution. There's no formula. It's much more art and feel to make that decision. What was your impetus like to say, all right, I can go from 4 to 3? So not like the heart part of it or the work requirement part, but more the finance side. Why were you okay saying, all right, I can go down to 3?
I think mostly just crunching the numbers, sitting down, looking at what was coming in. And we can touch on this later, but we were hanging out somewhere around 700 ish farmers market. And so basically broke it down. And it's like, all right, we have, I think we broke it down into four. Yeah, it was like exactly 4 quarters. So it was like 1 week or or two farmers markets a month will pay rent. One farmers market a month will roughly cover basic operating expenses, paying electric bill and basic stuff like that. And then one farmers market a month will offset what I'm missing at Crystal Organic. So it was basically just the money's working itself out. And frankly, we need all the time that we can get to keep production going. And so it was less of, oh, like we can make this work. And it was like, if we play our cards, we might make it through by the skin of our teeth. But yeah, I just need the time on the farm.
Yeah. And by all those numbers you're quoting, that's all like rent for the farm, electricity for the farm, or
That's house. No,
every.
yeah, that's combined with like Crystal Organic. Like, putting everything together. Like, yeah, sorry, I missed that part. Like combining what I would still be making with there, because it all comes through the farm business. Because I'm a 1099, so it's all farm income essentially. But basically breaking it all down with sales at the farmer market, yet broke down to about a half goes to paying rent here, another quarter goes to like operating expenses, and another quarter is like our living expenses.
Right. So for people following along, it's if you go back to the beginning where you're work before you even had farmers market sales, it's 100% of your income is coming from your other farm job. And so now it's okay, that amount is X. Now you have farm sales, that's Y. So now you have X plus Y as a total. And you can, if Y, the farm sales side goes up, you can dial back X and stay more or less constant or play around with that because now you have the two streams to really balance out.
Yeah, and that's essentially what we're doing, is just trying to, yeah, if X goes down, we need Y to go up. Or because Y went up, well, I was allowed to pull back on X being Crystal Organic, so that Z works itself out and we still pay our bills.
You can look at the numbers and say, hey, we'll make it through by the skin of our teeth, or we'll feel good. There's enough of a buffer here. I think, and I'm asking this for a lot of new farmers, new entrepreneurs. How do you know the time is right? Because it could, like on paper, it could look okay. You've been selling, I think, 4 weeks now, maybe 5 at the farmer's market. Is it long enough? But the numbers say one thing, but then you bring into like the hard to quantify part inside you where there's like some nervousness, people get scared. How stable are these numbers? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, ideally, I would have held out as long as possible. I would have worked as the 4 days a week at Crystal Organic as long as I could. But I think I just reached a point last week before this decision was made where it was like my physical health, my mental health, and just the overall health and success of crop culture. Like I didn't have much of a choice in a way. This wasn't, obviously it's always a choice, but this wasn't like, oh, we've played our cards right. And I think we've executed and now everything's just going the way that we wanted it to. And it was more of, man, I really wanted to push this out for another month or so, but I feel like my arm's getting twisted a little bit and it's just time to just to pull back so that I can give myself a little bit of a breather and focus on building production because it really felt like at this current pace, even though we're making like 700 ish every week at the farmer's market, at the current pace of how much time I can devote to the farm and the other job, it was like we're basically riding off of what's in the field now that I've been working on when I wasn't committed to a farmer's market. And then now I was looking into May and thinking like, ooh, if we don't start getting our stuff going now, like May and June are going to be super slim. And I don't even know if we'll be able to be bringing $700 a week to the farmer's market. So it's like trying to look ahead and plan and think like, all right, I need to start making some moves and creating more space now so that one, I'm not racing towards burnout in the first 3 months and also being able to keep production at least this scale, if not try to slightly scale up a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tough balance because you want to sit there in safety, right? The safest place is like the most comfortable. And that's where you can run your business and have another job because that's the best of both worlds. Now you
Yeah.
have your job and now you have all this extra income from your
Hmm.
business that's taken off. And it's just like a huge bonus. The negative is just what you're alluding to. At some point, it becomes challenging to do both physically, mentally, emotionally. The rest of your families has some input into all that. And it's like, all right, we're going into war. At some point, we got to start stacking up bodies here and putting ourselves out there and take some risks.
Yep.
Because you can't stay in that bubble forever. It's just not realistic. And you have to, I think there's never an exact right time. No one will know it. I think, except for everybody will have that feeling of now is the time. You
Yeah.
look at what's coming down the pipe like you did. We're going to have to be ahead of production. I know how I feel. I know what sales are. And it's, if we zoom out a little bit, it's okay. You go down to 3 days, it doesn't work. You go back or
Yeah.
you do what you can. You stay at 4 and you risk burning out and hurting the business. So now
Yeah.
the business dies or takes a step back. How do you recover from that? You give up 1 day of income, which it's not like you or I are making $1 million a day, right? Like 1 day of income isn't probably changing the world, but that extra bandwidth you have has the potential to change the world for your business. If you think about it, it's 1 day.
Yeah.
Would I rather have that 1 day of pay or that one extra day of time to get this business further down the tracks, be more stable, that type of thing?
Yeah. And to be able to take the time to do like work, execute on the business the way you want to, as opposed to like we've alluded to this in past episodes where it's like, yeah, it's hard to get certain things done when like, all right, I've got 2 hours before the sun goes down. Let's hope we can try to squeeze the project in. But now it's like, all right, I've got a couple of whole days that I can work on. Fridays are more or less dedicated to harvesting for the market. Like today, I was working on the farm exclusively today, and I could get multiple projects started and finished all the way through without having to really stop, come back after dinner or this or that, whatever, just because, yeah, it's like I have time. And even though on an hour per hour basis, it may not be as much of a, it's like, all right, well, you just added 6 hours here. So maybe you could go back this 2 hours in the evening on Wednesday evenings now. And even though it all may work itself out in the wash time wise, the fact that I have 6, 8, 10 hours to solely devote to the business without any sort of interruption was a huge game changer. Yeah, now we're really accomplishing tasks and not just like putting in work hours just to make sure that the business is still trucking along.
I think that's a huge thing, having
Oh,
just a solid block. 1 8 hour block is arguably more productive on like a farm where you're doing projects that take a long time than
Yeah.
2 hours here, 2 hours there, 2 hours here, 2 hours there,
Hmm.
because you can just never. It's hard to get traction, I imagine, when you're just splitting up time so much.
Exactly.
How does it feel at 3? I know this is early on, but does it feel like you have more breathing room?
Today, so last week was my first 3-day week. It was a little against my will. I was sick. And so I took a day to just, I was hurt and sick. So I took a day to just rest and work on business stuff, like computer stuff. But yeah, after today, it was great. Just getting tasks accomplished and not feeling like I'm racing and trying to squeeze stuff in. Like I could just work at a good steady pace and stop and walk to the house and eat lunch. And I had my son with me the whole time. It just worked out. And it was nice to feel like I'm not just racing to squeeze in as much as I can in this super tiny window. It gives you that kind of breathing room to say like, all right, we're just going to keep trucking, keep getting projects done. And then you look back at the end of the day, and man, we got a new bed ready. We got a couple of beds flipped, some stuff transplanted, some stuff started in the seed house, and we accomplished a lot today. And I think I was out there for 6 hours today because I had to go and run some orders into town, which is another thing. Now it frees me up to start doing pickup stuff in town. So now we're expanding outside of just farmers market sales, which is also a strategic reason why I picked A2. So yeah, really accomplished a lot. It's feeling like it is giving me a little bit of breathing room, and hopefully with playing our cards right with the online pickup, it will recoup those lost hours and wages relatively quickly, hopefully.
That's always the trade-off in business. Can I better utilize that time to make more back? Or if I
Yeah.
hire somebody, does that free me up to make more back? It's that
Mhm.
constant cost versus output thing. At this stage, does it feel more real than ever?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's real on the financial side just because it has to generate some sort of income for us to be able to pay our bills. So it's like very much real on that side, but also having multiple days where I get to get up and my only responsibility is to just work in the business. And that feels really cool. Feels really good. Makes it feel really real. Yeah. So I think between those two things, it's like, all right, getting an idea about what this sort of like work, real entrepreneurial lifestyle is going to begin to look like and like how it's going to look for us to live this work from home, starting your own business sort of thing going. So yeah, it's super real now.
Is 3 the last step between 0, or could it go down more?
We'll just see. At this point, I'm trying to not make plans. I think initially when we first started everything, I thought I would have been part-time by end of February and, and it's just things have all changed. So at this point, I'm not really making any sort of plans. I'm just taking it a step at a time. I didn't think I would have gone down like a day at a time. I thought it would have just been like a hard break at half the time, and then we'll make a hard break when we go full time. But I think realistically, it might be, it'll just depend on how things go crystal organic. It might be like, listen, I think it'd be a better use of your time if you like just stuck it out for a little bit longer until you ready to go full time, or yeah, fine, go down to 2 days or 2.5 days or whatever. So yeah, it's either going to be like go down one more time before we make the hard break, or it's going to be the hard break. I don't see that happening anytime soon unless the farm is just jamming, but everything's so new and so uncertain. I'm not really ready to jump all in on that quite yet. Even though my heart wants to, my brain, we need to wait. Let's take this a little bit slower.
Yeah, with all those crossing signals between the newness, the unknown, the little bit of track record you have, how nervous do you feel about it all?
Varies from day to day, but pretty nervous. But it's definitely, we've made our bed. Now it's time to lay in it. There's ultimately we can always back out, but just because of the way that we played our cards with both like the house and the land, just the whole business and everything, it's we gotta ride this out for a little while. And so I think the idea of not having an exit strategy is a little nerve wracking, but it's also the same thing that's like really nervous because like it has to work now. It's not just like a fun side hustle that if we decided tomorrow, man, I don't want to do it anymore, we cut it off. It doesn't really change anything. Now it's like, all right, it has to work. And so it's the same thing that very nervous is also the same thing that makes it super exciting. And so there's all kinds of emotions, all kinds of feelings, all wrapped up in one. And you, it can go from day to day from like super excited, ready to take on the world to like ready to break and bust into tears and everything in between. And so it's been one hell of a ride so far, and we're just getting started.
No, totally. And I appreciate you being honest and sharing a lot of the early emotions. I try and remember back to what some of that was like when I started stuff. And some of those memories do die with age, it seems. And I still get the nervousness. I don't ever feel like the stuff I'm doing with Modern Grower is going to collapse. I'm always like, there's always that seed in my head, right? Like that
Yeah.
something change, the world changes and it goes away. And then it's what happens. But I realize now, like, hey, you just figure it out. But there is always that sales in any business are never always up forever. They're never
Mhm.
always constant. So there are days or weeks where you're like, oh, it was slow this week, or it seems slow for the last few days where you're not freaking out, but you're like, you're paying attention and there is some nervousness. So I've been doing this for 7 years now, and I still get a bit of that.
Yeah. But I think more after you've weathered a few storms, you realize, oh, all right, the ship can handle it. And right now it just feels like we'll just stick with this ship metaphor. It's like, yeah, we just left port for the first time and riding into potentially the storm clouds in the distance. And it's like, all right, we'll see if she can survive. And so, yeah, I imagine as we go through some ups and downs and weather some storms, you'll have a sense of confidence and reassurance that we've survived worse. We can make it through this. But yeah, right now it's just a lot of, we don't know if we can make it through 2 down weeks in a row. I think we can. Everyone seems to think that I can, and they're telling me that I can, but let's just hope that we can, yeah, like weather a few storms and let this thing prove itself to be seaworthy, so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah, like you can't control the storm, if you will. That's the market in this metaphor.
Hmm.
You can do a few things to obviously dress things up and play with pricing to try and tweak it and juice it up, but you're not going to take it from a week where you did $400 in sales. You're not going to rearrange the booth and get 800 just by changing the appearance or something like that. That is what it is. It's just you don't kill yourself in these early stages by doing dumb financial things. I think that's how a lot of businesses really fail is it's not that the market turns, it's the market turns and they never adjust.
Hmm.
If the market softens and you keep doing the same stuff over and over, that means you're just spending money with less sales coming in. If we see it slowing down, we have to spend less, we have to adjust, not making huge purchases that like suck up all available cash, not having, oh my God, I'm rich syndrome, right? Of
Yeah.
which a new
I did a little bit of that over the last couple of weeks, just to be totally honest with you. But it was all investing into the business. But it was like, oh, probably could have waited a little bit before we pulled the trigger on that.
Well, it can feel like that, right? You go from zero to suddenly like a few $1,000s in sales coming in. That's a pretty like monumental change, like zero to anything, right?
Yeah.
1,000% growth. It is a way to feel like that. It's just being smart. I think that's it. Because you can weather storms in a business if your ship is tight enough.
Hmm.
But if you have leaks
Yeah.
and a bad hull, foundation is probably the word I want to use, but
Yeah.
then it makes those storms tougher to take because there's already weak points that when it comes in, it's like it can get in there and
Yeah.
drain it. But like in mine, it'd be like having too much inventory, investing in a long lease that's too expensive, betting on growth, hiring too many employees, that type of thing. Things that are hard to get out of where you can't get that cash back. It'd be like you go build a bunch of high tunnels right now that ties up a bunch of cash and there's no way out of that once that money's tied up. It's hard at your stage to really go broke buying too much seed and things like that within reason. You plant a bunch of beds and they don't get sold. Yeah, it sucks, but that's not a death blow. Going out and
Yeah.
buying a Kubota tractor would be.
Yeah.
With the change schedule, does it feel like you have more time now to work on the business? I know in past episodes we talked about finances, tracking numbers, starting to look at that. But I totally get how like some of that stuff can take a back burner till we have to make sure we have product to put in front of a customer to sell.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like there is that much. That's all about to change with the online store. It gets launched tomorrow. And so that's going to be a whole nother like logistical thing of dealing with online orders and pick lists and making sure that we'll have to invoice people or just, and all that stuff. But right now it's pretty smooth sailing. It's like everything can kind of be handled between Square and QuickBooks. And so I feel like the admin side isn't super demanding at the moment. And what my hope is that we can transition to where, all right, these couple nights a week, you're getting home from Crystal Organic and you're just head straight to the farm and just working until dark. It's like, all right, now like you got a couple of days where you're totally committed that maybe you don't have to get over there and try to squeeze in and get a couple of beds transplanted. And so now it's like, all right, go home, eat dinner. Maybe you let the kids watch a movie and you sit there on the computer and you hammer out some stuff, update the farm store, before it goes live for the next week. And so I'm hoping that by shifting my workload from these sort of sporadic times to these dedicated longer times, it will allow me to squeeze in working on the business bits here and there, or it's about to get too hot to really pick much of anything in the middle of the day. And so that'll be a great time to run inside, grab a bite to eat, update the store, just check on invoices or whatever. Yeah.
There's still probably a lot of things to consider, right? For like crop planting, successions, bringing beds online, right?
Yeah.
I would imagine you're left with this. All right. You mentioned you flipped or you got a couple beds, but it's what do we do with the rest of the beds? Do we waste time putting those in now and then planning them out? That takes a lot of thinking ahead of where are we going to be? What are we going to have to harvest? And if you're just in like survival mode, get it done, that type of planning like really goes out the window. I feel like maybe not.
No, yeah. We're trying to play both. It's this like dance of let's harvest as much as we physically can to sell as much as we physically can without wiping us out for the next couple of weeks, while also getting stuff out fast enough that we can get something else in with a bed flip, with the next succession of something. And also like, all right, we also need to think about all the long season stuff that's about to come online. That's in the seed house. And yeah, it's this like dance of expansion and just trying to make do with what we have, but also thinking about the future and thinking about what needs to go in its place. And it's stuff that I feel like that's the nature of what this is. It's not like it's a thing that's unique to my situation, but we're no longer in this like nice compartmentalized, all right, right now we're focusing on building and we're focusing on growth. And right now we're focusing on like building sales. We're just throwing everything at the wall and just trying to do a little bit of here and a little bit of there, just keep our head above water at the moment.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of marine themed books where they're battling aliens or something. And you're in the middle of a firefight, right? Like you've planned, you got your position, and now it's just like the battle's on. And I feel like at this point in the season, summing up what the first year would be in one word, it's just survive.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Forget the nuance. We're not going to be worried about putting 2 shots right in the center of the forehead. It's just take them down. Let's get out of here and move on to the next one, because we do not have time to get cute with it. Like that all comes in the future. And I wonder if too many people get bogged down in the first year of trying to be too cute, like trying to overplan, trying to keep it too compartmentalized, where I feel like, I don't know, you'd be able to answer this more. Do you need more of that survivor, just on the go, being able to adapt mentality where it's just like one thing to the next? And if you tried to sit there and like logically plan it all out and make lists, I don't feel like that would ever match up to reality, and it'd be a waste of time.
I think so much is new and there's so many like unique variables because, even though I've gone through several seasons and seen those like cyclical seasonal changes, when it's all on you and you're the one solely making those decisions, it's like, in a lot of ways, it's almost like every bed flip, every succession, every planting is a completely new venture. It's a completely new thing to try to do. So yeah, we planted, this is our 4th bed of lettuce. But this is our first bed of lettuce at the end of April into May, where it's starting to get warm and it's starting to get dry. And so it's like, all right, this is a totally new hurdle and totally new challenge. And if I was spending too much time trying to like dial in, here's exactly what my succession plan for lettuce looks like, or here's exactly what this is the spacing we're going to go with, and we're going to harvest it on this date and this is exactly what we're going to shoot for sales per bed or like revenue per bed. If I was trying to do all of that right now, yeah, stuff's going to either be slipping through the cracks because I'm trying to like hit a particular formula, or it's just going to just blow up because I'm not able to just be agile and on my toes. And yeah, right now it's a lot of just being on my toes, going with my gut, looking at a lot of things, screwing a lot of stuff up, mowing down stuff that's not going to get a second cut because you thought you could and it's not going to anymore. And well, yeah, it's be on your toes, be ready to change and transition quickly. And yeah, just shoot for surviving this year.
Right. How different does it feel having to make literally all the decisions versus going to a farm, working there where you're probably more or less being told what to do?
Yeah, there's no more or less. It's actually every task is like, all right, do this until you're done, and then come find me, and I'll tell you what to do next.
Okay, so
You know,
so you have that. So you have, okay, te- tell me what to do versus I have to figure out what to do. How different is that in reality? Like for somebody who's maybe not used to that of just every decision falls at your feet.
yeah, it definitely it takes another level of like mental aptitude that that's the one thing that I was definitely, there's a lot that I wasn't prepared for, but that's definitely one of them. And we might touch on this later, but when we throw in the variable of someone else is there working with you and you have to tell yourself what to do and them. It's a lot of you finish a task and you just stop and look around and go, okay, I see 6 things that probably need to be done. What's the most important? What time is it? And yeah, there's a lot of nothing's automatic. Like every task is here's the top 5 things I probably need to do. Let's let them duke it out in my brain for a minute and see what wins out. Sometimes it's like we get halfway through a task and it's, oh, no, I think I just need to go ahead and jump on the other one and do that. So it definitely takes a level of like mental planning and strategy that don't really know if there's a good way to learn that other than just doing it. I imagine because every day is a different day. Every project is so farm specific, weather specific that I don't think there's like a spreadsheet that somebody can sell in their e-course and be like, here's your ideal task list for the week. You have to just be in it and just go through those seasonal changes, go through those kind of crop transitions and just understand like and then just be flexible with how the weather and the markets, your schedule changes and you just I'm hoping I'll just figure it out and it'll become these like natural rhythms that will happen eventually where it's, oh yeah, we're getting close to Easter, which means it's probably time for us to start.
Yeah, we're operating outside the e-course here. We are
Oh yeah.
way outside the fence. And this is, you're right, nobody can teach you here.
Yeah.
I don't care. I can't. Any JM can't. Nobody else offering an e-course can. You just have to do it. You can read up on it. You can plan all you want. But it's these little things that it's a combination of, I think, who you inherently are,
Mhm.
what life experiences you have, and how much you can personally adapt. And some people can't just do that. Like they're just not wired that way. That's why
Yeah.
not everybody doesn't own a business because they
Mhm.
can't, or a
Yeah.
successful business. They just don't have part of these skills. I remember back in 2016 or 2015 when Curtis wrote his book, one of the things that became immediately obvious to me then in talking with him a lot and working on the forward for that book is you have to be adaptable as a farmer. You have to be able to make decisions quickly. And that's a you thing, being you or whoever's listening to this or me.
Yeah.
Some people can't adapt. Like they miss, either they miss what's going on and realize they need to adapt, or they get paralysis. And some people just can't make decisions. And I've talked to a lot of people that try and hire now. And this is, I think, a younger generation thing. Probably all people say that, but
Yeah.
now with like devices and stuff and so much standardized testing where it's choose A, B, or C. Yeah, you can be great on a test. We're in the farm world. It's okay, what's your seeding density for carrots? And they can be like, oh, whatever, 500
Yeah.
grams per bed. But it's
Yeah.
okay, the carrots look like this. This situation's happening with the weather, and you need to get this done. What do you choose? And they're like, 500
Yeah.
grams. And they
Yeah.
just don't know. Like it's these off the book decisions where you have to think outside the box, make decisions full well knowing that they may be wrong. And if they're wrong, it's 100% your fault. And you're going to have to deal with the consequences. And I think the only way you get better at that is doing what you're doing, stepping out of safety, going over the fence, out into the wild, and just start swinging at things in the night and saying, all right, what's working, what's not. And every day you build that decision-making ability, that resilience that only comes with time of, all right, I tried this last time, it didn't work. Now I got to try this. And you figure it out. One of the shows I've got sucked into at night is watching these gold rush shows
Mm.
on like Discovery. And a lot of these are, so I used to work in finance, dealt with a lot of gold mines, but these are like the big, huge miners. So these are like the mom and pop miners on a lot of these shows, the equivalent of like you versus somebody with 1,000 acres farming lettuce. And it's just a lot of what they have to do to survive. They're in the middle of the Yukon with limited supplies. Something breaks. You can't run to a hardware store. You can't call somebody in. You got to figure out a way to fix it. Can't, your business is screwed and you're in trouble. And they all have, they learn over time, like we have to be self-resilient. I think many farmers bear that trait, and you only get that through so much trial and error.
Yeah. And I think there's this like fine line, because what I don't want people to hear, and hopefully they're not hearing this, but it's just like, oh yeah, it's just about being flexible and being able to problem solve with back up against the wall. And if you can just do that and just work with what you got, then you can be successful. And it's no, like a lot of those, my back's up against the wall and I just have to make a decision, came from 2 years of slogging through having to weed this bed or transplant this crop. It goes back to your like marine analogy of you just got to survive. It's like you have to survive with the knowledge and the skills that you gained over several years of like training and experience, so that when it is time to not think, but just react, it's like you're reacting from a place of, it's not just like purely pull it out of your rear end and just go with the first thing that you think about. But it's no, like you do have some foundation that you're working off of. Yeah. Because there's no way that I would be able to be doing anything that I'm doing right now, running into a situation with X, Y, or Z, if it wasn't for just being able to like see the way things go down on someone who's been doing it for 30 years, or reading books or watching YouTube videos and thinking about like, all right, this is the way the guys at No Till Growers do it, or this is what JM wrote in that book, or this, or whatever. So it's like you try to gain as much skills and experience and knowledge and practice as you can. And then you just have to be like, all right, now we're taking the plunge. And then it's time to just stop thinking about all of the things that you've studied. And it's time to just start like reacting and going from there. And I think that's like the only path to success that I really see, other than you just have a bunch of money and you can just throw money at problems until you figure out what works. But the reality is it's like most of us don't have that luxury.
Yeah, and even then, I think when you start throwing money, that becomes a solution. It's not,
Yeah.
it's never figuring it out. It's just put more money on it. This is, I love to compare business to football, and this is exactly how, what makes a good quarterback. You look at Patrick Mahomes, right? Why is he so good? Or why was Caleb Williams the number one pick in the draft? Because sure, when you go into the game with a game plan of who you're going against, and there's rules and what we're going to do, and we have our tools, the receivers, and we're going to go in. And sometimes these teams are scripting the first, whatever, 10 plays. But then after that, we're reacting to what the defense does. We're
Yeah.
adapting to the flow of the game. How are our players playing? But why somebody like, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes versus who's some average quarterback, whatever, anybody who was with a Patriots quarterback last year? Why is he successful? Because he can excel when the plan when it goes off script. And I
Mhm.
think that's entrepreneurs. Yes, anyone can run a farm when it's going perfectly to plan. That's probably the first few weeks of the season, right? Before you get under the grind of it all. It's sure I can crop plan all day, baby, and plan
Yep,
out beds in March, but try doing it in June when now you have pest
exactly.
pressure, weather, successions, markets in full swing, all that. And that's what's the difference between a Mac Jones and Patrick Mahomes is we go off script. I'm going to find a way to get it done. And that's what you have to do. But you're right. Emphasizing this point of it can't be wing it. That's not the plan. It's
Yeah,
there's the plan, but you have to be prepared to wing it in many scenarios.
exactly.
Drop-in days from the full-time job is freed up bandwidth. The other thing you talked about doing and you have done now, you brought on an employee.
Yeah, that was definitely like, yeah, shoot first, ask questions second. That was definitely a decision that was made very spur of the moment for a couple reasons. One, just to back up, I had a friend of mine really passionate about agriculture, really wants to go into viticulture and winemaking. He has like a kind of a family history of that. His kind of family works in that arena. And when he just came and volunteered the first Friday that we were harvesting, and it was like, oh my God, if I didn't have this guy, I would have been up a creek. I'd been harvesting into the dark and not gotten anything else done. And then I heard this thing that he said to me after that first day. He said, yeah, man, I'll try to be here on Fridays as much as I can just to volunteer. And it was echoing through my brain. And maybe it's just from years of coordinating with volunteers, probably just that because I can't depend on I can depend on him, like, he's a great guy, but, like, I can't bank on, like, you just showing up and you want to, because at the
Right.
end of the day, if I'm paying you, that's what you're doing. And so I had this realization that having his help was invaluable. Like, I don't know what I would have done these last 3 weeks without him. And so it's like, if you wanna bank on him, like, you need to put your money where your mouth is and you need to lock him in. And so I called him, like, "Hey, man, listen, you've been a big help," and just threw out the offer, essentially, like, paying him what I would be making at the other place, and so he agreed to it. I'm pretty flexible. Some days it might be half a day, whatever's great. But it's still pretty loosey goosey a little bit, just paying him cash for right now. And because we're just testing the waters, but
About how many hours a week?
it's just one day.
Oh, one
It's
day.
literally just helping with harvests and then whatever else we get done on Friday. So I think he's worked 2 half days and then 1 full day with me. But yeah, but really at the end of the day, yeah, if I didn't have these warm days, like I would just be spending all day picking and really doing nothing else and probably be missing stuff or not being able to get as much picked and ready to go because I think I really underestimated how much time it would take to, pick 7, 8, $900 worth of stuff to take to the farmer's market the next day. And so I just shot from the hip and just locked it in and decided to make that financial commitment. And then we're just gonna see how it goes. This past farmer's market was a pretty bad one. And so thankfully he's on vacation, so I don't have to, he's not gonna be here, so I don't have to pay him. But that also means I have to do it all by myself. So we'll just see how it all shakes down.
Yeah, and employees are one of these things that I guarantee every business owner will go back and forth about in the early days. Should I? Should I not? It's a very hard decision, and in hindsight, I can't imagine not having them. Unless you're such a small business that where you could literally do everything and you felt extremely comfortable doing everything and not pressured, which I don't even know what that business would be, but I can't imagine it's a farm. And I have talked to people who sound really happy and are doing it with one person on the farm. And I just don't see how it's possible seeing what you guys do. And I always,
Is it their like main source of income for their family? Because that would be my second
I mean,
question.
yeah, but like a significant business.
Jeez.
It's not like a side thing. So, it can only be so big, right? Like it
Yeah.
depends on what it is. So maybe you could do it with a microgreen business where you shrink down the footprint. If I'm only operating in this room, right? Like it's much easier to manage even 500 trays a week myself, then now I got a whole field to worry about, even if it's only an eighth of an acre and it's 20 beds or whatever that is. But yeah, they do it. But in my experience, it's always been employee is always an additive thing. So it's 1 + 1 is 3.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can get more done with an employee than I can without an employee by a lot. And if
Yeah.
I can have them do stuff that's lower value for me, then it really helps. Sure, I could do, I don't know, whatever in mind, pack a box. But if I pay somebody to pack a box, odds are I'm doing more with that time than if I was putting tape on cardboard.
Yeah.
So it's tough. And it is, I think, early on a leap of faith. But it just comes down to, like, at your stage, it's if finances are so tight, right? Like, it's a no. But if it's questionable, it's, does this allow me to, let's say you pay the person, I don't know, $80 a day. Can I generate $80 of value to the farm? At least that, by now having myself freed up to do some other things. Sales calls, talking with customers, crop
Mhm.
planning so we have stuff to sell in the future. I think it can be justifiable. And if anything, it just, I don't know, does it feel alone or lonely being a solo business?
But yeah, like I was texting with one of the guys at the other farm today, and he's like, "Man, it's so quiet without you being there because I'm a big talk." And I told him I was like, quiet for you. I'm out there by myself. But no, yeah, it's definitely it can be a lot, especially on when you hit the days where it's like nothing seems to be going right or the finances are feel extra tight. Yeah, sometimes it can be a lot to just be out there and just carrying the weight of all that and not be able to whether distract yourself because you have to give someone else a task to do, or you can only listen to so many podcasts to drown out the anxiety. But yeah, and so that's another element too. It takes some of the drudgery out of it because you can either divide and conquer or you can tackle tasks twice as fast. And so it's like, all right, where there's a couple of relatively easy jobs, I can just send him on those while I go tackle more high value things. Or here's this really big kind of like very hard job that has to get done. So it's like, all right, let's just do this together. Let's get it knocked out. Boom, we got it done in an hour. It gives you a bit of boost in your morale and you can just keep going. We got that done. We can check it off. And so there's so many different elements to it of having a person there, having camaraderie, having being able to outsource lower value tasks to someone else to give you bandwidth to focus on other things, to just having the flexibility. Yeah, like I don't think I can run out of rubber bands, but I can't make bunches of carrots fit on rubber bands. It's like I got to run to the store to get a pack of rubber bands. And if like I come back and he had all the salad mix washed and packed and ready to go, it's, oh man, like I would have lost an hour if I didn't have that person there. Things will probably change as my time gets freed up. Some of those tasks that we maybe were accomplishing on Friday can now get accomplished on Tuesdays. And we're coming into a different season where we're moving away from this like constant picking you do with like lots of greens and salad greens and stuff like that. And we're moving into things that like have to get picked and don't have a long shelf life. And we're coming into the longer season things that like have to be picked every day. Snap peas just came online this week. And so that's, I probably won't be spending a lot of time on Friday picking those because I've been doing it every other day throughout the week. And so as we transition in our rotations of what we're going to, maybe having someone there on Fridays will be less important. And so I don't know, it's all, there's so many variables. And I just tried to make that clear up front with it. Listen, dude, like I know I have just as little idea of what's going on as you do. And so let's just take it a step at a time. Thankfully, he's flexible. It's one day a week, it's half a day a week sometimes. And so if I tell him like, man, money's tight, I can't really afford to have you, he might still come out just because he was going to volunteer anyways. Or if I just say, listen, man, I just don't have enough work for you this week. Just like, enjoy your time, work on your business or whatever. Yeah, there's so many variables still at play. And it's, should I have added the extra complexity? I think I needed to because it freed up some headspace, freed up some like work time. It's felt like a relatively safe investment up until this point. As long as sales stay up, it will be good. But yeah, it's a lot of complexity.
I think complexities can be bad, but if you have an easy out, right, that's the thing. You're not committed. This isn't like you filed a bunch of paperwork to get somebody here on a work visa, right? And now
Oh
you're
man,
committed
yeah.
to them for a year or something. And if there's open communication, say, hey, it's not working for whatever reason, you can get out of it. And you didn't lose. The good thing is you didn't lose the time when they did help, especially if they're good, right? Like you're getting
Yeah.
all that value, but you adjust as you need to. And it's a easy decision to pivot off of if you can. And I think the more decisions you can put yourself in early on when there are so many unknowns and you're learning so much, where you have the ability to pivot without much damage, you're just that much better off. It's just locked in decisions that really are painful to undo. Painful being whatever that might mean, physically, emotionally, financially, then that just makes it harder. So I think you've done a good job and you're doing all you can do. I don't think anybody could sit here, and I'm sure there's things people could nitpick on and say, oh, do this instead, do that instead. But until you're like in the seat driving, like you're doing what you can.
Yeah. And it was definitely like a surreal moment to essentially pay somebody, even though I'm making sales, there wasn't like this direct, oh, I'm paying myself $15 an hour or whatever. And so it was definitely a humbling moment where I realized like, oh, like I'm paying somebody else to do this job before I'm really technically even paying myself to do this job. That was definitely like, I never would have imagined that I would be paying someone else before I'm paying myself. But it's just trying to stay agile, trying to stay adaptable. And in the moment for the tasks at hand, it was just, yeah, this is the decision that I need to make to do that, to hopefully set myself up for success in the future.
That's exactly how I viewed things in the past. And maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but it's the pay is less valuable to me today than building something that is long-term sustainable. I would rather sacrifice taking some pay myself now and pay somebody else to get something that's going to be bigger, better, more stable, more long lived, and then I can get that value further down in the future. Or I have this chicken and I'm hungry, and every day I get this tiny loaf of bread. If I just eat half the bread and give half to the chicken will grow up to be a chicken. And then I
Yeah.
get the eggs, and then we're both winning there. And I come out ahead, when I get the eggs. But I can eat all the bread now, and the chicken dies, and I'm out.
So my employee is the chicken in this metaphor.
He would be, and you're the person
Okay.
eating half the bread.
Gotcha.
So we have a lot of metaphors in here. People are going to be
Oh man.
Barbies, Marines, football, ships, chickens. So story
Welcome to
time.
my brain.
Yeah, exactly. This would be a fun one to do some sort of graphic interpretation of a comic strip, because it'd be Aesop's fables here.